Hi team, welcome to my session on Coffee with Prab, and today we're going to discuss about domain 4 questions of CC IC2 exam. I already made the video of the part 1 and this is the part 2 in which we're going to discuss some cloud questions which give you better visibility about the domain 4 from a cloud computing perspective. If you're new to the channel, do subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss the future videos on a similar topic. So without wasting a time, let's start with the first part. Thank you. So first coffee shot, which of the following is a true statement of the software as a services? I repeat, which of the following is a true statement of a software as services? Now SaaS is basically where you get a services based on a subscription where the vendor develop everything and they provide us the application in a URL. So Office 365, then Microsoft, Google, all are basically Gmail. These are the example of SaaS. So vendor develop application, they provide us on a subscription basis. So question saying that which of the following is a true statement of a SaaS? Option A, capability of a customer to use provider application running on a cloud infrastructure. The application are accessible from a various device through either thin client interface such as web browser or program interface. It makes sense. Let me park this option. Option B, capability of a provider to use customer application. No. Capability for the provider to use regulated application running on the cloud infrastructure. But why capability provider? It is all about the customer, right? I'm the customer. The application are accessible from various devices through either thin client and web browser. Till that part is okay, but the first point is basically wrong. Option D is capability of a customer to deploy their application onto the cloud infrastructure using programming language, library services, tools supported by the provider, but that is basically a PaaS. Because in a PaaS, what happened? We get a platform on which we develop our application, we run our application, we deploy our application. But in the SaaS, we get an application from the provider. That's why the most close option is basically called as A for alpha. Let's move to the next question. Thank you. Okay, second coffee shot. Which of the following is a true statement regarding the infrastructure as a services? So in the IaaS, what happened? Customer will get a complete virtual VM. Okay, provider is basically rented him a CPU, RAM and storage, and billing will be done based on how much I compute CPU, how much compute RAM and how much compute a storage. I can deploy any OS on top of it. I can do anything. I just need to pay for number of compute. That is a IaaS. Actually in a IaaS, the user has a more visibility. User has a more control where the provider has a limited control. So question saying which of the following is a true statement regarding the infrastructure as a services? So option A, capability for a customer to utilize a provider processing storage makes sense. Network makes sense. Other fundamental computing resources to deploy run OS application to other software and cloud infrastructure. Let me park this option. Capability of a customer to deploy their application, okay, onto the cloud infrastructure using a programming language, library, tools supported by the provider, which is not true because it is a definition of PaaS. Capability of a customer to use a provider application running on the cloud. This application accessible, but that is a definition of a SaaS, which is wrong. Capability of a provider to utilize client processing storage, which is not true. Network and other fundamental computing resource to deploy run OS application and other software on cloud infrastructure. So only close option look like answer is A for alpha. Now let's move to the next question. Thank you. Okay, so which type of cloud deployment where data standards, portability, integration is required? See, when you're talking about, we have a 4 type of deployment. Okay, first is called as a public cloud. As a user, I can directly subscribe for the public cloud services where the billing services account will be done based on a usage. Like I can open the Amazon account, you can open the Amazon account. For both of them, we have a common SLA. So company is selling a cloud services. So common SLA, common contract, common control for everyone. Second is basically called as a private cloud. Private cloud means dedicated cloud infrastructure for the company. Suppose my company name is infosec train. My company name is aspirants. So we have a global customers and we have employees. So what we decided, we will not going to move any data on the cloud. We will build our own data center in which I will host the cloud services. And this cloud services will be used by my employees and my customer. So by this way, I have a control over the governance. I have a control over the data. One of the primary advantage of going with the private cloud is that we have a control over the governance and we have a control over the data. We have a control over the governance and we have a control over the data. Okay, that is the biggest advantage we have. One of the biggest disadvantage, it is very expensive because we are building from scratch. But private cloud is also two type. One is basically called as a build and one is basically called as a buy. Build is basically you build from a scratch. And buy is basically you buy as a services. Example, Amazon. Amazon is ready to provide me a private cloud as a services. Dedicated server, dedicated control, dedicated support and everything. They say, boss, we will deploy everything in our on-prem. Whatever you required as per the compliance requirement, we ready to provide you. The only condition is that the data will be, or server will be in-house. But in the case of build, you build from a scratch. You find the land, you construct a data center and you host the services. So in a private cloud, the concern is the CapEx, capital cost. But in a private cloud, buy is basically not involved too much CapEx cost. We need to pay for the services. Community cloud, where the 2-3 companies come with a common vision and mission. So now what happened? We have a company 1, we have a company 2, we have a company 3, and we have a company 4. So they have a common vision and mission and they have invested together on this particular infrastructure and they decided to store data in that. So that is basically called as a community cloud. In India, if you take an example, we call it as a IBCC, Indian Bank Council, Cloud Council. Another example is Adani. Another example is Geo. So they have built their data centers and they have shared the data center with their parent companies or child companies. But the next is basically called as a hybrid. Hybrid is basically we using the multi-cloud vendor. Example like we have our on-prem cloud infrastructure. My employees, my customer is using that. January to November, it is fully utilized. But only for a December, the load is basically high. So what we did, we extend and use the external public cloud to share the load. So this condition is basically called as a cloud bursting. What we call cloud bursting. So this is how we basically extend our cloud services and use the public cloud for the function. So this is the perfect example of the hybrid cloud where we have a private cloud and we have a public cloud. Second use case is that we are the software development company. So we're doing all the development in a private cloud because of the trade secret of the source code. And once the application ready, we deploy that code on the public cloud as an application. That is another use case of the hybrid cloud. Third use case of a hybrid cloud is we are running our own cloud services. Any point of time, if it's down, we can migrate the service on the public cloud. So by this way, I can able to share the load. So that is another example of the hybrid cloud. But when we're going for the hybrid cloud, 2-3 concerns are there. One is portability, because whatever the application running in a private cloud, okay, it is designed according to my private cloud. The data which is created according to the private cloud, whatever we have. Is it clear? It is happening on my private cloud. Tomorrow in the case of disaster, I want to move in the public. Okay, so I have to look for the data portability and all that. So by this seamlessly, I can able to move from one environment to the another environment. Okay, so data portability we have to check. So when I'm finalizing my external cloud provider, I have to check the portability. I have to check the data standard. I have to check the regulation. So that is the only thing in the hybrid cloud. Because tomorrow if the disaster occur, I want to migrate my machine failed miserably on the public cloud because it is designed according to my private cloud infrastructure. That is why data integration, portability and all that is the biggest concern in the hybrid cloud. Let's move to the next question. Okay, next coffee shot. Aspirants Technology LLP establish a corporate infrastructure and develop a customer facing website or web application by utilizing several SaaS and IaaS platform. Which of the following solution would be best for providing platform monitoring and visibility? See, when we're talking about the question has a 3 keywords. One is keyword is facing web application. Second keyword is utilizing SaaS and IaaS. And third keyword is visibility and platform monitoring. So first option is SIEM. See, SIEM is basically more from an infrastructure monitoring. Okay. So example like even we have a 1, 2, 3 And this is basically my enterprise. Here we have a SIEM here. We have a system A, we have a system B, we have a C, we have a D, all are basically connected with the SIEM. So from SIEM, from interface, we have a visibility what is happening. But what about integration with the cloud in the multi-cloud? So SIEM will not be effective. Firewall is limited to one particular solution. Vulnerability scanner is only used to identify vulnerability. What we use today nowadays, which is called as a CASB, because CASB has a feature of SIEM, has a feature of firewall, even they have a feature of vulnerability scanner. How? So we have a customer here. He will basically subscribe for the CASB solution. And then CASB is basically integrate with all the service models. Suppose in this case, it is integrated with the SaaS, IaaS, and another SaaS example. So now what happen is, user is basically connected with the CASB. The CASB is basically provide me the complete visibility, whatever is happening on the cloud. From a CASB, I can apply the policy also. Example, I'm using a Office 365. Now on the Office 365, I want to apply the policy that no one's supposed to send an email on a public domain. So if user is basically connect with the Office 365 and try to send an email on gmail.com, this solution will be inspected by the CASB. And if the thing goes against the compliance, CASB basically record that as an activity, and he provide the information to the cloud administrator about everything. So in a one single interface, I can see the compliance issues, data breach issues, number of disclosures, number of activity, number of files tried to access by the user, everything we can check in the CASB. That's why today CASB is basically used for the cloud monitoring. That's why the answer is B for beta. Okay, let's move to the next question. Okay, next question. Which of the following type of attack is being used when attacker respond by sending a MAC address of attacking machine to resolve the MAC to IP of a valid server? See, question talking on type of attack is used when attacker respond by sending the MAC address of the attacking machine. So what is this concept all about? See, when we're talking about option A, session hijacking is all about we have a system A, we have a system B, and there is an attacker. So A basically send the request, B basically ask for the password, C, A provide the password, and B, when it's sending a token, he hijack the session, take over the session, and through this he gain access system. But here the base of the attack is required the spoofing. But the question is not talking about that. Question saying attack is being used when attacker respond by sending a MAC. In this case, we're not sending a MAC. We are spoofing the IP by which we hijack the session. So session hijacking removed. IP spoofing, like attacker basically spoof the A IP. They say, hey, I am A only. Please send me rest of the communication on my system. So it is also not happening. Evil twin is basically in the Wi-Fi, so that is already gone. So only option left is ARP spoofing. Now what is ARP spoofing? So we have a system A. Every system basically maintain the ARP table. It is connected with the switch. And we have a system B, and this is basically the router we have. Okay, so now what happen is A basically have a ARP table which maintain the neighbor IP and MAC address information 1.1.1.2 9B H9 1.1.1.1 9H H7. So 1.1 is the MAC address of the router, 9H H7, and 9B H9 is the MAC address of B. So A IP address is basically 1.1.3, B IP is 1.1.2, and router IP is 1.1.1. For A to access the internet, the gateway will be 1.1.1.1. So now what happened when he type google.com, if you see the OSI model, it go from application to presentation, from presentation to session to transport, then transport to network layer. Network layer, they will see gateway is 1.1.1. Then they will look into the ARP table. 1.1.1 is mapped to which MAC address, which is called 9H7. So they attach the 9H7 and pass the information to switch, by which it pass the information to particular router only, by which he accesses the internet. Now ARP poisoning attack is what? B is basically run the ARP poisoning against the system A, by which he changed the MAC address of the ARP table. So 1.1.1.2 he did, which is his IP, which is his MAC address. So now next time when he type google.com, in the network layer, they will see 1.1 is a gateway. Okay, but 1.1 gateway MAC address is 9H7. They attach 9H7 to the data. When the data passed through switch, Switch thought, okay, they want the data to be sent on 9H7 or 9, sorry. So 1.1 we have mapped with 9BH9. So now what happened, data is basically 1.1 is the MAC router gateway, but 9BH9 they basically add there. So now what happened, the switch passed the information to B based on 9BH9. So that is how the B will able to intercept the information. That's why they say attack is being used when attacker respond by sending a MAC address of attacking machine. Okay, that's why the answer is basically ARP poisoning attack. Okay, let's move to the next question. Thank you. Which of the following best describe an attack where the communication between two parties are intercepted and forwarded to each party with neither party being aware of the interception and potential modification to the communication? Which of the following best describe an attack where the communication between two parties are intercepted, okay, and forwarded to each party with neither party being aware of the interception and potential modification? See, spear phishing is basically like a phishing attack where we send the phishing email to the specific user. So A removed. Man in the middle attack is possible because we can spoof. Suppose we have a system A and we have a system B and there is an attacker. So attacker basically spoof the B IP and say, hey, I am B to A, and he can spoof the A IP and tell the B, hey, I am B, please send me the data. So by this way, B send the data to attacker, A send the data to attacker. Neither they are aware about, they are sending to each other. Okay, they are in the impression that they are sending to each other, but here what happened is attacker getting all this information. So base of the attack is spoofing, by which man in the middle is happening. URL hijacking is you click on the URL and hijack by the user, and transitive access is basically both side access. So that is already gone. So only close option in this question is basically B, man in the middle attack. Let's move to the next question. Thank you. So question is, which of the following attack can be used to exploit a vulnerability that untrained user created? Which of the following attack can be used to exploit a vulnerability untrained user? It means those who are dumb user, they have not in the security awareness training, which is easy for them to exploit. Option A, spear phishing email with file attachment. Definitely true, because there is no countermeasure for the social stupidity. There is no countermeasure for the human stupidity. Even you train them, even you don't train them, you install the hi-fi solution, they might receive some lucrative email, they click on the email, it bring the organization trouble. So A makes sense. DNS poisoning is a server level attack because attacker poison the DNS cache, change the IP address, and by which reroute the query. So B definitely not an answer. Man in the middle is basically where we intercept the information, and domain hijacking is also done through the DNS poisoning. So only close option is basically is called as a A, because suppose I am a user, I join one company, I was not aware about anything about information security, and one day what happened, I receive one phishing link. I click on the link and it downloads some kind of a exe in my system, which remotely create a connection with the server, and by which he extract the data. Even we have a great solution, but with one click, I bring the entire organization in trouble. That's why we basically went with the answer A. But in the case of B, DNS poisoning, what is DNS poisoning is, we poison the DNS server into believing it receiving the authentic query. How? Suppose this is basically the attacker, fake DNS server. Okay, which is called as a fb.com, facebook.com. Now he basically he send the new record to this DNS server, which is a real server of Facebook, that hey, 1.1.1.1 is the fb.com. So DNS thought we receiving a query from the authorized server, because DNS work on a UDP, he update the record called 1.1.1 fb.com. Now there is a user who reach, where is the fb.com? He said fb.com on 1.1.1.1. And that is how user was redirected to the fake website, which is hosted by the hacker on 1.1.1. And user basically load the page, in that he enter the credential, and that credentials are basically stored in the server. So countermeasure is basically DNSSEC. So whenever any new record comes, DNS should verify with the help of signatures. So that's why the answer is basically A for alpha, or sorry, B for, that's why this is called as a DNS poisoning. And the question is not talking about that. Question saying that exploit a vulnerability that untrained user created, which is called as a phishing attack. That's why the answer is A. Now let's move to the next question. Which of the following attack where the attacker encrypt and organization data and demand payment to restore the access. DOS attack, but in DOS attack, we're sending a multiple requests. Sniffing, we intercept. Monitoring, we intercept. The only solution is basically only attack left is ransomware attack, in which attacker gain access to server, encrypt the data and ask for the ransom. What is the countermeasure if you get a question? The countermeasure is frequent backups, because you cannot recover the key. So this is all from my side. Do let me know how do you find the session, and stay tuned for my next video. Bye. Take care.